We're going to be talking about Sitecore CDP and Personalize and how we have had good experience making this kind of tricky tool set simple, scalable, and sustainable for a lot of different organizations. We'll do some introductions. My name is Jensen. You might know me as MJ. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at Perficient and a two-time Sitecore Strategy MVP.
I'm Filippo, also known as DSF. I'm the principal of our Sitecore practice. I lead us from a go-to-market, really getting embroiled in all the new technologies. I'm a four-time Sitecore MVP.
And hey, my name is Jonathan Corley. I started at Sitecore in 2017, but I was on the partner side ahead of that. I lead the experience strategy group on Sitecore's customer transformation team. And I look forward to talking about Sitecore CDP and Personalize today. So I thought I would start with a quote. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And change has been absolutely constant the last few years. Can't believe we all lived through a pandemic. I think that's especially true in the MarTech space as well. If you would have asked most folks in the room 3 years ago if they had ever heard the term composable, they probably hadn't. I've heard it a dozen times today throughout different sessions. But today I do want to talk about personalization. And when I think of personalization day to day, a really good example of personalization that I use is Spotify. It's Your Daily Drive podcast. So I've been working remotely for almost a decade now, so I don't have a commute. But when I fire up my laptop, fire up Outlook in the morning, I turn on this Daily Drive podcast. And it doesn't matter which device I'm on, whether that's on my phone or a tablet or my laptop. I get up-to-date news within like a 15 or 30-minute increment from news sources that I trust. There's artists that I've listened to for years that I enjoy, or new artists to discover. But most importantly, the marketers on their end can measure the success or engagement with the tool to optimize. And regardless of which industry you're in, your customers they have heightened expectations. They're using Netflix to consume movies. They're buying things on Amazon. They're exposed to these just impressive levels of hyper-personalization, and they expect your brand to remember and acknowledge them, to know them, to understand their current needs. And Amazon does a good job of anticipating future needs. So if you I bought a camping lantern recently that has a really unique battery size. Amazon likely moved that battery to a fulfillment center near me before I even realized I needed to purchase it. And personalization and marketing automation are a couple of vehicles to deliver on those expectations. So we saw in the main presentation today, kind of the quotes or the layout of all of the different hexagons, or all of Sitecore's SaaS solutions. And within the Sitecore stack, you've got CDP and Personalize that we're focused on today. As you look at advancing or scaling personalization efforts, at Sitecore we like to think of this in 5 stages. Advancing through digital maturity from emerging all the way through digital experience leadership, or leading. And if you're doing some personalization today on XP or Experience Manager on XM, there is some low-hanging fruit to get up and running with basic personalized experiences, but pretty soon you'll hit a wall. Sitecore Personalize opens up some really interesting possibilities, and when you look at CDP plus Personalize, it allows you as an organization to both excel and to lead, really level up the digital maturity model. So if you look at omni-channel engagement, we took kind of a crawl, walk, run, fly approach to personalization. And in the first stage here, your brand might just be planning personalization efforts. So you're beginning to consider what sort of tactics should I roll out? What sort of customer data should I use? Maybe in the early stages, you're using the web and the mobile app channels But as you level up through digital maturity, you've got a lot of runway to scale your personalization program or your personalization efforts. And finally, it's a lot easier today to approach experimentation or personalization than it ever has been. As technology becomes a lot easier to use and a lot more intuitive, when I first started working with A/B testing, to launch and measure the results, you needed someone with a master's in computer science and a homegrown testing capability to measure the results. But today, Scott Brinker calls them citizen creators. You've got power users or just members of the marketing team that can set up and publish a personalized experience in minutes. It's easier in this low-code, no-code world, easier than ever to use, which makes it even more important from an organizational governance perspective to make sure that your team is set up for success. So I'll hand it to Megan to talk more about sustainability.
Thank you, Mr. Corley. All right, so now we're going to talk about how do we make this sustainable. It wasn't that many years ago that I was an in-house marketer like a lot of you are. And I know that there are so many things on your plate and you probably have just the right size team with maybe just the right number of hours in your day. And very often, organizations with really good intentions and they're really enthusiastic, they get started on personalization. But when stuff gets busy, that's very often the thing that takes the back burner. So how do we kind of turn that around and make this a priority? So since we're doing quotes, I'm going to quote one of the great philosophers of our time, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Success isn't always about craziness, it's about consistency. It's about really committing to do this for the long haul and putting aside some time to make sure that you learn and do it right. So we've had some really good implementations over the last year for CDP and Personalize, and it's a complex tool set. It's robust, it's scalable, it does a lot of stuff, and that can be a little overwhelming and intimidating for companies where their team is already busy. How do we take on another great big thing that we need to learn how to use and do these big long-term strategies? And we just want to help you guys get started. And one of the things that we've learned is how important it is for your team to learn how to work together in a different way. If you're coming from the XP land of personalization, once things are configured, a marketer can kind of, decide that afternoon there's a promotion we forgot, we need to drop a rule on a component, and after lunch it can be personalized for all practical purposes. Your marketing and IT teams need to work a little bit differently now. You need to work a little bit closer together. It's important to know who is going to be on that team. You kind of need a core team of champions. What is their skill set? What is their level of competence with this tool? Do they need some training? What is everybody responsible for? So that's a really important place to start. And then we've learned that it really works best if you get all those folks around the table together, at least to start out with, to kind of make your laundry list of things you're going to tackle together. How long is it going to take to the developers to get their work done, hand it back to the marketing team. And it can be a little bit rocky, it can take a little bit of time right at the beginning, but your teams are going to have to work together in a way they haven't before, probably, if you're coming from the XP world of personalization. And it's really important to acknowledge that you're starting on a journey together. As much as I hate that word, it really is. And so you're all going to be learning together, figuring out what requirements are needed, how long does it take to build these templates that the marketing team needs. And so to really commit to being good sports about this process and commit to consistency. Just commit that you're going to do this for 6 months or a year, and make sure that your team has the time to do it. And then work together on continuous improvement. Do your retros, follow Agile, make sure that you're learning as you go along is really important. And if you can tackle this, the technology itself will come along. So this is kind of a typical model for a core team for CDP and Personalize. You're going to want some strategy, you're going to want data, UX designer, back and front end developers, a digital experience leader in the middle to kind of keep you anchored to that North Star, and you need a really good project manager to herd the cats and keep you all moving in the same direction. So start thinking of who on your team has the aptitude, the interest, the enthusiasm for this, and start kind of looking at what that team might look like. And I stole this from Sitecore, thank you very much, but this is a great analogy, kind of the wedding cake analogy. You don't start out doing the the chuck and dye, 30-foot wedding cake right off the bat. You start small. So take the great big thing you want to do and break it down into that first deliverable. And then within that first deliverable, what does that include? That includes some UI, some back-end work, that sort of thing. But the really important thing is to just start, just do a thing. You have to work out the kinks, make sure that you find issues quickly, ensure development is on track, and deliver some value early. You don't need to, contemplate the color of the sky for months and months. Just get going and just start doing and learning together. And so this is an example of kind of what a typical process might look like. At the beginning, you're doing some website tagging, integrate your channels, get everything set up in CDP. Just get your first experience under your belt, design, build, test, deploy, measure. And then once you do that a few times, you can kind of get in the swing of things and have a more quick turnaround with your agile delivery and strategy. But one thing I want to point out here, and it was kind of hard to see, is the build, measure, learn methodology. And this is not Perficient, this is probably Sitecore's, I don't know, but it's something that our team really adheres to. And I was that nerd in 7th grade that loved science fair every year, and I had the scientific method down pat. I knew exactly how to define a hypothesis and do your experiments and that sort of thing. And that's what this is. You have an idea, you build the thing, you look at the analytics. Are your users doing what you want them to do? Are they engaging in what you want them to engage in? Is it performing the way you want it to? And then come together as a group and look at the performance, the analytics, what happened when we made this change on our website. And if you hit it out of the ballpark, fantastic. I'd say you're like the Minnesota Twins, but that's a really bad analogy, although I heard we won a game this week, so that's pretty great. But learn together, and if you need to tweak some things, and that's where the experiment section of the CDP and Personalize really comes into play, because you want to find out if the thing you're doing is working, so don't ignore those analytics. And then once you get in the swing of things, you build your little backlog, all the things you want to do. Maybe there are some things that are on a schedule. If you have a promotion, if Black Friday's coming up, you have some things that need to be done by a certain date, so prioritize those. But this may take a little bit longer at the beginning. After a while, once you have your processes down, you have some templates on the shelf ready for your team to use, this should go pretty quickly. And then you can just have this nice, tight little agile methodology and look at your demos, look at your results, see how things are doing. So this is a story Jonathan shared with us. This is a company, I believe, out of Australia?
Yes, out of Australia.
Yeah. And they put everything up on the wall. What were they working on? What was working? What didn't? What did they learn? And really made it visible to the entire team what they were doing and what was working and what was not working. And I think that's a really great way to get some enthusiasm and buy-in from people who aren't around that little table.
Yeah, this is right. It's the marketing floor in the building right when you come off of the elevator. You've got an A/B test, and they're asking every employee on the floor to vote, do you think A or B will win? Just to raise awareness about the experimentation that they're doing. And they were surprised by other departments, the sort of ideas that they got back from teams once they started raising awareness of the experimentation program.
Yeah, I believe it. And I'm a firm believer that good ideas can come from anywhere. So even if you have this core team working on getting the work done, get everybody involved and let them see what you're working on and see what they come up with. And, they may have some really good ideas or, hypotheses on how to make things better. So this is at least a place to get your team started and start working together a little bit more closely. And DSF is the grand finale of this thing.
Thanks, MJ. So the last part of our talk is on making it simple. And I too want to start with a quote. And although he's not as well known anymore as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Bruce Lee actually has a number of very inspiring quotes, and this one is very apt. Simplicity is the key to brilliance. So when it comes to getting started with Sitecore Personalize, it may feel a little overwhelming. But one thing to keep in mind is Sitecore Personalize comes with 14 out-of-the-box web templates that you can very quickly get up and running on your site. Now, these are all what I would call additive experiences. So you don't have to worry about your existing site or anything like that. These just get added onto the page. These could be things like alert bars, pop-ups, corner pop-ups. They have a whole library of things that you can go up and running. And the nice thing about this is, because they're additive, it's very easy to set up an experiment and have a control and see from a results perspective what the value that it's bringing. Because you're basically adding a new CTA to your pages, and you'll be able to look analytics-wise and see if it's working or not. So first place when you start a personalized project is look through those, see what makes sense, but make them your own. So the out-of-the-box components are pretty general and generic, and what you don't want is to give access to, give them to your marketers to start from scratch with doing, right? So you're going to want to customize them, right? You're going to want to align it to your design systems. You're going to want to make it so that the color schemes and the fonts all match your existing brands and colors, so that you don't have to think about it every time you want to add a new experiences. You want to set the defaults to make it easier and faster to go use it. Create drop downs for colors instead of using the wide open color picker. If there are parameters in there that are customizable, that shouldn't be customizable, remove them. They're pretty easy to kind of manage. And one thing I would definitely recommend is create a thumbnail, so that when you're looking to select a template, you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And this is just an example of one that we put together. The other thing that people get intimidated by the first time you look at creating your own template within Sitecore Personalize is you have to specify the HTML and the CSS to create an experience, and then use JavaScript to insert it into the page and replace things. And you may think, whoa, I already created these components in my CMS, and now I have to recreate them here. It may seem like a lot of work, but I'm here to tell you it's really not. Because it's pretty trivial to take an existing component that you have on your site and turn it into a web template. And let's see if this works. So this is just a recording. There are actually a number of browser extensions that make it very easy. And one that I chose to use is Snip CSS. And it's actually a free Google Chrome add-in. And as you can see, you're able to kind of select within it where's the container you want to extract. And sends this little kiwi out there who starts pecking at your component, and then he'll actually pull out all the HTML and the CSS to give you the look and feel. You can see on the bottom here, it's kind of functional. And then you can just copy and paste it into Sitecore Personalize, create a template. And then once you're in there, you're able to very quickly parameterize it by taking the text and the images and even attributes in there and basically replacing it with a text box. That gives you the ability to give your marketers the ability to change this stuff pretty easily. And we can see in a little over a minute, you can then preview it, and then you can just change the content on the fly. So without thinking about starting from scratch and how do I rebuild these components, we can very quickly go through our site, identify places where we want to be able to personalize, promos and things like that, extract it, spend a little time parameterizing it, and then you're up and running, adding to your personal library components that you can then go use.
And David, I'm not a developer, but when you showed this to me for the first time, I was shocked at just how approachable it is, like how that would have taken hours in other products. That took like seconds.
Yeah. So the next area I want to talk about is decision models. And this is another area where it can be a little intimidating, because you go in there, it looks very powerful. This is the big area in Draw Sitecore Personalize, is the ability to create these decision models that really allow me to take like a next best offer approach. But when you get into the designer, you start seeing things, there's this canvas and there's places for JavaScript. It gets confusing very quickly. So my advice to you is to, before you even get there, start with a piece of paper. Think about how you're going to conceptualize your personalization model. A lot of times this is going to be based on a journey map. So across the top, you can see these are just the stages of the customer journey. Awareness through loyalty. And then within them, what are the offers you want to go after? But this may not be the right model for you. I've had other models that are more persona-based, where I'm listing personas on the top, and here are all the offers that I have for each persona at different times. And then for each offer, you really got to think about context. Sometimes you have an offer, you don't want to provide it if they've already done something, or you don't want to provide it if it's a case that's really going to turn the customer off. So you really have to give this some thought. I actually wrote an article that was in CMS Wire about 3 or 4 weeks ago on this process and on how you can kind of conceptualize your personalization strategy and map this out.
Hey, DSF, before we move on, can you tell us what an offer is?
Sure. So there's lots of terminology in CDP and Personalize, but an offer is a piece of content that you want to use to drive an experience. So you can think of them as the content templates of Sitecore Personalize. So just like in Sitecore, you create a template where you put your promo stuff, you define a template in CDP and Personalize with like a title, a CTA, an image, and things like that. So here, these are just the names of the offers, but in the end, we attach a bunch of content to them. So that if we're selecting an offer and we want to have a promo, we want to drive the content from the offer instead of specifying it in those template fields like that.
Yeah, and just to pause for a moment, when we start projects with clients, if they're new to CDP and Personalize, the very first thing we do is talk about the glossary and what we're talking about when we're talking about this terminology. I spent 3 months banging my head against the wall trying to figure out why we would be doing like sales and special offers for B2B companies. I'm like, why are we giving them an offer? Well, because an offer is not that kind of offer. So take a minute, pause at the beginning of your project, and make sure everybody's using the same terminology together, because it can really save you a lot of time and frustration and kind of going in circles. So that's just one of the things we learned along the way. Sorry, continue.
Sure. So the next part, like once you define this model, when it comes to actually implementing it, that's where it gets complex very quickly. So one of the things we actually did was we put together a decision model modeling tool to make it even easier. So using this tool, which is actually can be run on Sitecore XM Cloud or XM or XP, it provides a canvas where you can kind of define the stages you want, whether they're parts of your journey or micro journeys or personas, and define what your offers need to be. And for each offer, you can see there's a section for requirements and restrictions. And just to kind of reiterate that point, like if you're in awareness and you want someone to register an account, you wouldn't want to show that if they already have an account, because that would be counterproductive. And then, like in the purchase phase, you would want to maybe have an offer to add accessories, but only if they have something in the cart. Otherwise, you don't have any context to go do it. So this gives you a way to really think through your personalization strategy and kind of set yourself up for success. And you may notice there's a tab on there for programmable code, because once you model this and define some of the JavaScript functions for those requirements and restrictions, it'll generate a bunch of JavaScript code you can copy paste into Sitecore Personalize. And it just works. I don't have time for a full demo here, but if you want to stop by our booth, I have it running on my laptop. I can show you how that works and how effective it can be.
And he's too humble, but DSF built this, so
It's my baby.
it is a baby.
All right, so I did want to provide a little more guidance to help keep it simple, and this borrows a lot from Agile, because I do think optimization has to take an Agile approach, right? You're never done. You have to be lean, you have to be continuously improving. And one of my favorite things from Agile is YAGI, you ain't gonna need it, which means don't over-optimize from the beginning and get stuck in analysis paralysis or stuck with big projects that you may not end up actually needing. So just some things to think about and things not to do that I recommend. So the first, I already showed you the out-of-the-box templates and how easy it is to create templates based on your existing components. But a big mistake would be to start and say, let's get a UX designer involved and design this new experience and start from there. I mean, start with what you can use out of the box, start with your existing stuff and get some value out of it. The other thing I'll say, just from an integration perspective, CDP is great in terms of supporting the personalized experiences you're gonna look at. Too often, we think we're implementing a CDP and we're going to do this as a data analysis project. Let's look at all the data sources, let's design a canonical model and all of that. You can do that, but my recommendation is focus on the experiences you're looking to build. Focus on those decision models. Coming out of that, you'll figure out exactly what data you're going to need and build to satisfy that. Because anything else is just going to take a lot of time, and you may not even ever need some of the fields you stick in there. The other thing is don't feel the need to cover every possible offer, every possible aspect of an experience, right? Start small, define an MVP. As you go through that, you're gonna find that there's data you don't have or don't have easy access to. Let's figure out what is that core value proposition we're trying to do and solve for that. And you're never done with this stuff. In the end, you can A/B test different versions of your model. You can continuously add offers, you can continuously add conditions, so it's gonna grow, but don't start complex, build to it. And the last thing, I always see AI is in the news and everywhere. AI is not gonna be your magic bullet getting off the ground. I mean, maybe you could use it to ask ChatGPT for ideas for content, for titles and descriptions and stuff like that. Down the road, especially on the decisioning front, you may want to use it to drive the probability that an offer would convert. And I can talk more about that later. But getting out the gate, don't worry about it.
So there's a lot of different ways to approach these kinds of projects, and we have a few different offers out there. I'm sure a lot of partners have different ways of approaching this. We can start small. We can do a jump start with your organization and get you walking in about 6 weeks, and do some training and get your things configured and kind of get you started. We can also do a really robust journey science engagement with you and really map out for all your personas and journeys from beginning to end, where those good conversations are going to happen. And then we can do it how you want to do it. You know, do you have 6 months to devote to this? Let's design an engagement to get you where you need to be in 6 months. But there's a lot of different ways, you know, big bites to take out of that elephant, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. And as you've heard, and I don't know what kind of the level of knowledge is in this group about how CDP and Personalize work, but I'm just going to reiterate, if you're coming from XM and XP, it's just different. It's so much different. And I even tell our clients, stop thinking about it as personalization. You're having a conversation. And the really overused metaphor I use is planning Thanksgiving with my mom. So we have kids in college and people work, so it's maybe not always on Thanksgiving. But about a month ahead of time, we start chatting about it at our kitchen table. You know, who's going to host? When are we going to have it? When do the kids have to work? That sort of thing. And we figure out when it's going to be. And then maybe we start a little chat group with my daughters and sister-in-law, and then we're sharing, Ina Garten recipes on Instagram, and maybe we chat on Facebook. And between maybe October 15th and Thanksgiving, we get it all planned, and we're sharing information and conversation across a lot of different platforms. But the thing is, the conversation that started at her kitchen table doesn't start from scratch every time we talk about it, because we remember the conversation that we started at the kitchen table. And that's what these tools allow you to do. You're having a continuous conversation with your users wherever they are, because you remember where the conversation started and details that they've added, and you kind of anticipate what they're going to need next. Nobody mentioned cranberries. You pick up cranberries anyway because of that one year had to go to Walgreens in the middle of the day to get cranberries. So you can kind of anticipate what your users are going to need, silver platter that content and that information to them in a way that doesn't feel like marketing at all. It just feels like a really valuable conversation between you and your customers. So this is kind of the end of our talk. We do have some time left. I know everybody's kind of running behind, but if anybody has questions, stories, things you've learned along the way, I want us to all walk out of here just a tiny bit smarter than when we walked in. So if you guys have any questions, we will try to answer them, but we have a few minutes to just chat about this. So if anybody has stuff they want to share, that would be great.
And Josh in the back has a microphone.
I don't need the microphone. Dee, if you would just show us the slide again. What is the Kiwi tool I'm going to go get?
What is the what?
The Kiwi
That
tool,
Kiwi
the
tool.
CSS
That's
snipper.
cool.
So fast.
It's called Snip CSS.
Snip CSS.
There's a number of them. You can go to the extension marketplace. I just love the little kiwi going across my screen and pecking at it. I don't care if it takes a little longer, it's just fun to watch.
If there's one thing that I saw this week that was the most exciting, I thought that was it.
There you go.
The Kiwi. Yeah.
I like how you MJ, right?
Yes.
Describe the personalization of what that really is.
Mhm.
That's okay. So I was wondering, would you say that making the content like personalized, that whole strategy development takes like 75% of the time of this whole.
Oh, the
engagement?
strategy?
Like,
Oh.
evergreen to whatever.
To building. So when you're getting started, and this is another bad metaphor, but think of your CDP and Personalize as like an empty bookcase with nothing on it. And when your team gets started, there's nothing for you to use. So you need to build audience templates with conditions and web templates and things like that. So at the beginning, you have to write every book from scratch and then use the book. After you do that for a while, and you've built some audience templates, you've built some web templates, some decision models that can kind of be tweaked, you start filling up that bookcase with things that your marketing team can just take off the shelf. So at the beginning, you kind of spend a lot of time figuring out how to get your work done and writing the books that are going to go on your bookshelf. And it's a little bit of a bell curve. So at the beginning, it takes a while because you have to build an audience template for every segment you're going to personalize to. But like the strategy piece, it can be as big or little as you want. I mean, if you want to start with one journey or one persona or one channel just to get started and see how it goes, start simple. I think it would get really overwhelming to try and like matrix out your whole experience across every channel and everything. So just start with one thing.
And John, so you have that slide, maturity slide. Is there something out there that shows the maturity slide of like evergreen, next baby stuff for content, personalization, kind of moving forward to like
So,
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been years since Sitecore's digital experience maturity model was updated or refactored. We ran some roundtable feedback sessions at the MVP Summit earlier this week. The new model will be publicly available in January, and there's an accompanying assessment that you can take a survey, and it plots you in one of 5 stages. And then that one slide is one of 6 different dimensions. So one is personalization, the other one is content, agility. If you're interested in that, find me afterward. I'm happy to give you a preview of the upcoming model. But stay tuned, that's January 1st, it should be published.
We also have one of our strategy colleagues, Tiffany Laster. She isn't here, but she'll be around later today. She has worked really hard on developing maturity models for both Content Hub DAM and Personalize, and they're much more like tactical, like what's exactly the thing that you need to do and accomplish to like consider yourself moved to the next, next bucket. And I believe they're all on our website, and then she's speaking tomorrow at SoCon as well. So we do have some stuff on our website that's a little bit more granular about that. And the interesting thing is, I think most companies think like everybody's so far ahead of us and everybody has it all figured out. Nobody has it all figured out, especially with these new tools. Like everybody's walking right now. So, everyone's kind of trying to figure it out together. So don't be intimidated by like the wedding cake, start with your nothing but bunch little baby cake, and that's achievable. And then, start dreaming about the Charles and Diana wedding cake you want to work toward.
and going back to your original question on how to get started, so especially on the strategy side, like one thing to realize is you're never done, right? So the goal is to get into an agile methodology to set that foundation you can get going. And there's really 2 different approaches we typically take. Some may be really focused on let's just get started, let's get something running, and that's what that 6-week offer is about. It's let's use out of the box some of the low-hanging fruit, get something out there, see some value, and build momentum. But that's not meant to start with like a really more intense strategy and workshop. It's not kind of like let's go fast and see what goes. But the other way we do is taking more of an agile optimization approach where we do set that foundation. And we typically do that, and it'll be different depending on the client and how far we want to go. But we'll do it in about 12 weeks, where the first 4 weeks is the roadmap and the workshops. We're getting into CDP, we're doing the decision model design, we're getting the integration requirements. And then we kind of separate up the next 8 weeks into kind of part 1 and part 2. Where part 1 is getting the templates out, starting the core integrations and kind of setting that foundation, with the last 4 weeks where we're actually starting to build some of those initial templates and experiments and actually getting them live. But the goal at the end of that is to really get into an agile sprint approach where we're working with your teams on the backlog, because the stuff we discover in that first 4 weeks we're not gonna be able to finish that in the full 12 weeks, and we're not meant to. It's meant to, like, how can we actually get that foundation so that we can get to that agile optimization play, right? And then over time, what we typically do is we scale down our capability, our participation, turning more and more over to your team. And we even offer, Josh actually manages our retained services team, and I think for optimization, retained services is great because you typically don't have enough work to keep a team full-time forever, right? What you really want is a bucket of hours, and we can go as small as 40, but usually around 100 hours is probably good, where we're bringing in some additional capability to help you analyze the results, make sure that your backlog has the right things. We'll usually do monthly or quarterly reviews to make sure everything's moving. But that's our typical approach and how we engage with our clients.
And our goal, whether it's 6 weeks or, we have some clients who do this with us for a year, and they want to kind of go low and slow and they don't have a ton of time at the beginning. But at the end, we want your team to be really comfortable and confident owning this tool set. And then if you, find that you just need a little help, like we can do some, long-term kind of, a small number of hours, but it's tricky to learn this on your own, so it helps to have a really good partner who cares about your training and education, documentation. So, once we're long gone, if someone starts in 6 months, you're not starting from scratch with that person. We give you really good documentation and artifacts and videos and things so they can get up to speed as well. Martin?
Maybe the final question, if we got the time.
Yeah,
so,
plenty of time.
Thank you. Jumping from monolithic XDB to, say, a combination of CDP and Personalize is the huge jump on its own, especially with the progressive approach as you just described. Like you cannot eat elephant, you can eat it by small bites.
Yeah.
So how would you see my marketing team enablement? So like they need to, there's no feature parity, so they need to know the nuances.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the process and how do you generally oversee the whole process of enablement?
Why is it a guy we work with asking the hardest question this afternoon? We didn't even plant you and you're asking us the hard question? Do you want to
Sure.
repeat that a little bit? It was hard.
So Martin was asking how do you prepare moving from the world of XP where everything is based on the rules engine and those XP and XDB capabilities to a composable Sitecore personalized and CDP world. And the truth of it is it's a completely different tool set. It's a different approach. As a matter of fact, a lot of the concepts that you have in terms of XP don't apply in the new world. So approach it with open eyes, and that's part of our methodology. And what we do is to make sure we're bringing you along. It's not just us going and implementing and handing something over that you don't know how to run. It's making sure that you're enabled to support it and get into that agile and own that process and drive results continuously.
It's also often a first step toward the cloud. Personalize works with any CMS, including XM. So you could begin with a few personalization use cases on top of XM before making a further migration.
And I mean, it's also limiting to just think that this is a web channel thing, right? The nice thing about Personalize, it's meant to be your enterprise platform for optimization across the board. So whether you're managing websites on Sitecore or multiple CMSs and multiple platforms, your internal portals, your email channel, your call center, it exposes APIs that you can drive custom content to your mobile app, right? So don't limit yourself in thinking that this is a Sitecore only website tool. I mean, XP was great when you were dealing just with Sitecore in that web context. Anything else was possible, but very difficult to do and very difficult to maintain. This is a different paradigm. So you can really think through multi-channel, omni-channel, and how you want to connect the dots across different points.
And today we've really just talked about personalization experiences. It's hard to get used to that word, but pretty much everything you do for personalized experiences, you can do testing too. And it's kind of the same process, so you kind of learn all of it together. And we want to get our teams to the point where they can test just about everything they put on their website and make it a part of their regular process. We want them to know down to the size of the font and the shade of green on CTA buttons what's going to work, and get attention and engagement, so they spend more time on what they know works and less time on what doesn't. Yes?
Question. You mentioned that when Personalize, you recreated that component in Personalize manually, right? You inspected that code and you made it redundant. I was under the, I had the understanding that you could point to a serialized data object in Sitecore directly without doing a clone. Is that, am I misunderstanding?
So right now, the content that you put in Sitecore Personalize is completely separate from
You
everything.
can't point at a serialized content object in XP or XM.
No, although what I have done in the past, and I actually have a blog post on how to do it, in a decision model, after you do decision table, instead of returning an offer, you can return an ID of an item.
Okay.
And I then use a call to Content Hub 1 or Sitecore XP to get the content and bind to it that way. Because you're right, distributing content, centralizing your content is a big part of this. And a solution where you're centralizing and pulling it from a shared location is the best way to go about it. So it is possible, but it's additional work.
All right, I think that's all we've got. Thank you guys for coming, it was really nice. Anyone else want to welcome yourself? Thank you.